welcome to our third round with four-color aggro. Pretty clean keep. So we get to a tune, and we're getting a mountain here because the energy cards in our deck are red. So if I have to repeatedly use Aether Hub, I'd rather, if I get a plains and I draw white cards, fine. If I get a plains and I draw red cards, I'm depleting my energy that I want to use to fuel them. Whereas if I get a mountain and draw white cards, I'm fine spending the energy because I don't have as many energy sinks that I've drawn. Pretty reasonable line there. So my opponent's got a decent curve. We're going to go to 19 here, and they scry. Actually, forget if I checked it first. They go bottom top, which not a ton of info there. Um, I sit here and think about what I should do for a bit. I'm not casting Cub into this because I want to trade. I could cast Voltaic Brawler so that if my opponent plays an artifact, I can block the Inventor's Apprentice and trade. But I come to the conclusion that I'd rather cast the Servant so that if my opponent casts an artifact and attacks, I can then deploy two things the next turn. Because then they aren't killing the Servant. So they do cast an artifact, which is Cultivator's Caravan. They attack with both creatures. At which point I'm pretty sure I'm just obligated to make a trade as opposed to getting, any kind of tempo out of it. They play another Little Dork, fine. And I just deploy a Long Tusk Cub that should hold off those. I can take a hit from the Caravan. And the play that I make this turn that's important is that I play the Aether Hub. So I get to go Aether Hub. So this is a 4/4 that I grew immediately to dodge a main phase Harness Lightning in response to an activation. So I'm going to go Hub. So that's 2 energy, goes to a 5. Voltaic Brawler goes to a 6, and then it can brick the 5/5 Caravan. That was the logic I was going through there. I'm playing the Hub as opposed to the tap land. My opponent plays another Caravan. Attacks with the first one. I don't have a profitable block. I go to 12. That's fine. So I execute the previous plan to make a 6/6. One card in my opponent's hand. And unfortunately, it's Depala. So my plan is just out the window. And there's a Motorist, so that's now a 7/7. Good couple cards to have. Um, Basically just kind of forced to take this hit. I could trade both my creatures for it, but I don't really feel like... I guess I'd only trade one. My goal is to try and get the Cub big enough and draw something to remove that. I don't really want to trade the Cub here because then I'm just left with a 3/2 against all of this, which is not going to end well for me. I need the large Cub to take back over the game. We draw a Chump Blocker, I play it, and guess what? Cub now gets to a 7/7, but on board, not looking great. Especially because my opponent can choose to pump the Caravan that the Cub is blocking. So I end up making a mistake here, and I just make a chump block in this. What should have happened is I should have double blocked here so I have another energy to spend on whatever I need to. But I think I'm pretty dead regardless of this because I can't really beat two 7/7s with this deck. Cultivator's Caravan is quite good against our no big removal, no artifact kill deck. So we get to make, we used all our energy on the Cub to make it a 7/7. If I double blocked, I have the leftover energy to make this a 6/6, but still, two blockers is putting us dead on board to a creature, which our opponent clearly has because they scried, and I die on this attack. Pretty straightforward game. Just was under the gun from the start and just died a little bit to giant creatures I can't trade for profitably. And if you didn't see it, but our opponent had a blue land in the reveal to Depala when they spent all their mana for it. So they're playing the full Mardu version. In terms of sideboarding, we took out Tireless Tracker for Harness. I wanted Reflector to stave off Caravan nonsense. I think I changed my mind on that since the first round. Caravan is really bad for us, and being able to keep creatures off the battlefield to make crewing it as obnoxious as possible is pretty clutch. Another easy keep. First turns, not a lot going on. I deploy the Cub first and get kind of shocked here by well, shock bombardment. I did not expect that card to come in, but in retrospect, it is pretty good against this deck. So I should have. I don't know if I should have played around that by playing the servant. I wanted to get the cub down and start attacking and applying pressure. That was the reason I curved that way. I could go cub, servant, pump over something random. As it doesn't really pump over a motorist, but I can get it to a 4/4 on the first turn. So our opponent plays a copter. We have an untapped land, and we have a servant. We're not going to try to beat down. We're going to try to hit our 4 drop. We don't really just want to jam Virtuoso out there as our first thing. I really want to get this Wanderer in play and start clocking away. Opponent doesn't do anything, which this really smells like a Skywhaler shot or unlicensed integration. So I don't want to run the Wanderer out. I just want to play something else and try and get the Wanderer in or force the removal spell elsewhere, do something. Our opponent Harness Lightnings down the Whirler in response to the energy trigger. Pretty important play to remember in this format. You can do that with other cards that have energy triggers. Um, Opponent slams a Gideon, which is about the complete and utter nightmare for us. They crew up, and things are kind of bad. We're very much under the gun to apply pressure. Worth noting, you can also respond to an Aether Hub enters the battlefield trigger. There's some weird spots where, like, I don't know. The one I can think of is like you have a Spatial Contortion in hand, and they don't have a blue mana. They play a hub with no energy, and you're like, oh no, I have to respond to the trigger so that they can't add a blue mana to Ceremonious Rejection or whatever. Something like that. There's a lot of weird spots, you know. They play an Aether Hub, and you're like, oh no, that's their second blue they'd get for Gear Hulk. You can imagine scenarios with it. Just keep it in mind in the back of your mind. So we attack Gideon down to 2, and we play our 6/6. And our opponent has a big Skyboat. Takes out our 2/2 and clocks us down to 14. We draw about the best card here, which is another Wanderer. We crack in to kill Gideon because we can't afford to have it attacking as a 5/5. Play the other Wanderer with the intent of using Whirler Virtuoso to block our opponent's flyers and race. But unfortunately, their last 2 cards are Depala. So they animate both of their boats, well, their boat and their copter. We go to 3. And remember what I said about that removal spell? Turns out they had it, and we die basically exactly to what's going on. We did stumble in the face of Gideon a bit, which is obnoxious. Kind of a big problem. The Galvanic Bombardment took a lot of tempo from us, but overall, I don't think I'm excited to play against these 1-drop lists. It feels like they can easily get out underneath us and kill our creatures. Which I think Marty is going to be on the downswing because of green-black, but it's something to look out for with this deck in the future. This is kind of a traditional, so the little zoo versus big zoo matchup like this, or like mono red versus green matchup, always plays out the same way in like basically every format, which is if you can start bulking up early, you can get into position. But if ever since they started printing creatures with real power and toughness, if you start bulking up on turn 4, you're probably going to be too slow. That's really the issue. So it might just be that the draws where you have like a 3/3 cub on turn 2 are enough, and the ones where you don't are a little sketchy, or you need more early spot removal or something. But I think this matchup needs a little bit of work to make me feel comfortable with it. Though Woodland Wanderer is some serious, serious beef.